Hello everybody, I'm Duncan Alexander and we're here ahead of the Champions League semi-finals with some more videos looking at how the teams that have got to the last four are going to shape up and approach probably the biggest match some of them have ever played. First up, it's Leipzig against PSG. As you can see here, both teams haven't really got much experience at this stage of the Champions League. PSG have got all the money and all the stars, but Leipzig have got Julian Nagelsmann, so it's all up for grabs. Today I'm joined by Kevin Chroust, Ben Mackriell and Tom Reynolds, and we're going to have a deep dive into how these teams are going to play the biggest game of the season so far.
So first up, we're going to take a look at PSG. Obviously a really exciting, interesting game against Atalanta, going right to the death. Certainly with half an hour to go, it looked a tough task for PSG after a difficult start. Neymar missing a couple of chances. Still a lot of unknowns around Mbappe, but obviously when he came on, he completely changed the game. And a lot of the storylines going into the game against Leipzig will be, is Mbappe going to start? It looks very likely. He looked obviously very impressive in 30 minutes the other night. And so the focus will be on him. And if we look at our analysis using possession value to quantify the impact that a player has through every action that they take and the ability for that to lead to a goal, we can see that in the game against Atalanta, in just 30 minutes, Mbappe had 3.2 possession value, an enormous amount more than the rest of his teammates almost put together. Neymar was obviously very influential, had those couple of chances, was really the creative cog for PSG in that first hour, but it wasn't until Mbappe joined the party that things really started to shift and the game started to really change. And so a lot of the focus will be on Mbappe. It'll be on how is he going to impact from the start, and is that going to improve the performances of Neymar, take some of the pressure off his shoulders. And if we look at actually what happened in terms of the patterns of play once Mbappe got on the pitch and started to join the fray, the dominance of play going down the left-hand side, these were all the patterns that Mbappe was involved in when he got onto the pitch. And you can see a huge amount just going down that left-hand side. They were trying to get the ball into space, trying to get him 1v1 with the fullback. We saw a number of opportunities created where either he was the dummy runner or they were able to get him into space and down the byline. And obviously that led to the winning goal. A great piece of work from Neymar and Mbappe down the left-hand side, and a ball switched across the box. So that's going to be the focus. From a media perspective, a lot of the focus will be on Mbappe. But actually, one of the things that I thought was really interesting in the game, particularly in that first hour, was looking at the three midfielders that PSG went with. Now, obviously, Verratti was out injured. Di Maria was suspended. They were slightly more limited in their midfield options. And so went into the game with Marquinhos, obviously a centre-back defensive midfield player, not the most creative player, very effective, but not the creative force. And then Idrissa Gueye and Herrera, who, again, two players very similar to each other, very similar types of energy, but not the most creative. And that really showed in the game. They really struggled to create those opportunities to break down the Atalanta defence. And, we're very likely to see a very similar setup from Leipzig in the game. So if we have a look at the players and the roles, this is looking at the Champions League this year, the players that have been involved with PSG and the ones that have created the most threat and the most danger from possession value and from all of their actions. We can see, obviously, we expect to see Neymar and Mbappe near the top. But two of the big misses from the team were Di Maria and Verratti. And so there's a big jump then between the influence that Di Maria has, even Verratti has, to the rest of the team. And you can see on here, Herrera's further down, Gueye isn't on this list, Marquinhos isn't on this list. So that midfield three was a real problem for them. Sarabia, who replaced Di Maria on the kind of left-hand side, right-hand side of that front three, again, not on this list, not particularly influential. So kind of really started to look at, who is the other impact? And Di Maria It looks like Verratti is going to be injured still. It looks very unlikely that he'll play any part in the rest of the Champions League campaign. But Di Maria is back from suspension, and will have a big part to play, I think, in the way that PSG create chances and create their opportunities for Neymar, for Mbappe, and for the others around them. So if we have a look at Mbappe's, if we look at Di Maria's performances so far, he's third in assists in the Champions League this year. He's second in expected assists, so the passes that we expect to lead to assists. He's second in that category. And he's been involved in 10 passages of play where he wasn't necessarily the assister that have led to goals, which ties him 7th in the Champions League this season. So hugely influential player, hugely creative, really the player that drifts around. And we can actually have a look using tracking data to actually identify where Di Maria is most influential. And the key to his play, the key to the way he can unlock defences is the way he moves around the pitch. So we have a look at the Coupe de Ligue final against Lyon, his last game before his suspension in the Champions League quarterfinals. And we can see how many different roles and how many different positions on the pitch that he took up during that game. He was found to be playing 14 minutes on the left-hand side of that front three that PSG really play. He was then very influential in central areas. He likes to kind of tuck in behind Icardi and around Neymar and Di Maria, and Neymar and Mbappe in those spaces between the lines, trying to create play. So huge amount of his play is in that kind of central area. And then he'll often line up on the right-hand side as well. So all across that front four, Di Maria is floating around, creating space and creating opportunities. And we can see if we look at just the attacking phases of play and when they're in the most kind of sustained threat, we expect PSG to have a lot of possession in this game, really dominate that kind of final third area of the pitch, with Leipzig looking to play on the break. And again, we can see how much influence Di Maria has in these attacking areas. But obviously that creates some opportunities for Leipzig on the counter-attack. So if we look at how PSG shape up when they're in facing counter-attacks, you can see against Lyon how many players they're leaving up the pitch. Those 4 players are not tracking back. There's a huge amount of space in behind them to be able to create those counter-attack opportunities. And I think that's probably an area that Leipzig will want to look at. So a hugely influential player, someone that has an enormous amount of influence on the play. And just kind of to cap it off, really, we can look at the patterns that Di Maria has been involved in the Champions League this season. So these are all the patterns and passages of play that Di Maria has had an influence on, has been involved in various phases. And if we take that kind of one step further again and look at that sustained threat area, and we look at those more kind of higher value opportunities that he would have been involved in, again, we can see how much influence he has on those areas around the box, those areas in between the lines, and getting balls into the box for Di Maria, for Mbappe, and for Neymar and Icardi. So although the focus will be on Mbappe, a lot of the chat will be going into the game, how much more influence he can have, how fit is he. I think Di Maria is probably the player that Leipzig need to make sure they don't sleep on.
Thanks, Ben. That's really interesting. I mean, as you know, once again, like we said the other day, it's everyone probably deep down knows that PSG are a collection of stars compared to Leipzig, who are more of a sort of, you know, a team drilled in their manager's approach. But it's good to see the numbers and everything back that up. I mean, obviously, in talking about stars, Leipzig have probably lost their biggest star, Timo Werner, who chose to push his move to Chelsea through and not play in the rest of the Champions League. But so far, it hasn't seemed to impact them too much. But what are they going to miss without Werner against PSG? Kevin's going to have a look at that.
Yeah, Dunk. So last week we talked a little bit about PSG and how their playing styles kind of changed from domestic competition to continental, and we saw some things with with some possession-based changes where if you look here, in France, they were able to transition their maintenance play in the back, which is essentially possession in the defensive half up into build-up and sustained threat. So it was more consequential. That didn't really happen in Champions League. So if we switch over to Leipzig, we can make a similar comparison. So this is them in Bundesliga first, and we notice that the styles where they kind of stand out a little bit are fast tempo. So they're playing a lot of 1 and 2 touch football. They stand out in build up against Bundesliga teams, and they play in sustained threat above the league average. Play a little bit above the league average in crossing. And then if we switch over to Champions League, we see a pretty stark increase there, and they're up to 19.1 crossing involvements per match, so 35% above the Champions League average. Pretty consistent across the possession-based styles as well, able to sustain some threat there. And then we see a spike in fast tempo as well. So which of these playing styles might be impacted by Werner being out of the lineup? If we switch over to player level on this and just look at Champions League and Bundesliga together, we see that Werner, he's a big part of this team in terms of direct play passes received, counterattack distance dribbled, and crosses received. So he's top on the team there. When he's on pitch, he's receiving 28% of their crosses. The guy who came in to replace him, Yusuf Poulsen, he's at 16% of their crosses received. And 28% of their direct play passes received. So there are areas where he can fill in here. The areas you're just not going to see it are in those possession-based phases, such as like build up. We see that Werner was 6% as a striker. It's pretty impressive. Sustained threat, he was at 10% of the involvements when he was on pitch. Fast tempo, 8%. For those styles, his replacement Poulsen's just not gonna be able to handle that. But with them playing PSG, we probably want to look at how they're going to be able to line up and play against a high possession team themselves, and Tom's going to handle that.
Thanks, Kev. So just looking at Leipzig in the Bundesliga this season, so similar to your radar, we look at how fast they are in fast tempo phase, so very, very high compared to the league average here. And if we just flip over to what they're doing in against high possession teams this year, you can see that things are very similar across all phases. So maintenance was very similar, build up and sustained threat, even counter-attack is exactly the same. But the high press becomes very dominant here. So obviously when they're against teams that are possession the ball quite a lot, they're actually stepping up into the opponent's half and actually trying to win the ball back higher. I thought what was interesting, what Ben mentioned, was about how PSG potentially was losing the ball around the middle of the park against Atalanta. We saw Tyler Adams' goal actually come from a similar position where Sabitzer obviously played that lovely ball around the corner to Angelino, who kite back for Tyler Adams to finish. I thought that was certainly something that we should highlight, because it's something that could actually happen again. And Leipzig are often trying to high press against these possession teams. So let's see if it happens in this match. Another thing that was interesting from the tie the other night against Atletico Madrid was Upamecano. He was so aggressive in his carries and bringing the ball out from the back. And we can just go to see how often he's done it this season in the Champions League, covering a lot of distance and having the ability to take on the opponent. He's actually getting into dangerous positions and actually having that final product with his end pass as well. So he was starting attacks, bringing Angelino into the fray, bringing Kevin Campbell into the fray, who I thought was very instrumental in the game the other night. So it'll be interesting to see if he can do this against PSG, obviously, with the pace of Mbappe, Neymar being able to shut him down, and players like, if Verratti plays, but players like Marquinhos at the base of the defence being able to intercept passing lanes. It'll be something very interesting to see how he does on the night.
Nice one, fellas. That was as instructive as always. I mean, I guess, this is a German football manager's world, and we just happen to live in it. We've got Jurgen Klopp setting new standards in the Premier League. This obviously pits Nagelsmann against Thomas Tuchel. And then we've got Hansi Flick, who's a big favourite to win the other semi-final. Obviously, a massively tactically advanced nation. So I think this game is set up to be an absolute classic. And, what we've seen so far in Portugal in this strange end of season tournament is, drama possibly even more drama than ever before. It's the might of PSG against the kind of cleverness of Leipzig. And I think we're all looking forward to the game. So, we'll be back soon with another preview of the Bayern-Lyon game. But in the meantime, thanks from all of us here at Stats Perform.